In the bustling streets of Chicago, where the city never sleeps, a silent terror lurked in the shadows. His name was Antonio Reyes, a mere teenager with the mind of a killer. Born in 2004, Reyes grew up in one of the most violent neighborhoods on the west side of the city. His childhood was anything but ordinary. Raised by a single mother who struggled with addiction, Antonio spent most of his early years fending for himself. His father was absent, a name without a face, leaving him to navigate the harsh realities of the streets alone. School was a battlefield for him. Teachers described him as distant and unapproachable. He often sat alone, scribbling symbols and sketches in his notebooks. He was bullied frequently, which only deepened his isolation and fueled his silent rage. Despite his withdrawn nature, Antonio found solace online. He became obsessed with crime documentaries and dark forums that discussed unsolved murders and infamous serial killers. His search history was filled with articles about criminal psychology, weapon crafting, and how to avoid detection. It all began in March 2020, but this was no random act. For weeks before the first murder, Antonio Reyes meticulously planned every detail. Late at night, he would wander the streets of Chicago, studying the routines of potential targets. He noted which streets were poorly lit, which shops closed late, and which alleys were hidden from surveillance cameras. He practiced with makeshift weapons, testing his strength and precision on abandoned objects in hidden corners of the city. Online, he researched police response times in different neighborhoods, understanding how long he had to escape before sirens filled the air. His notebook, later found during his arrest, contained sketches of escape routes, diagrams of nearby buildings, and lists of times when the streets were most deserted. March 15th, 2020. It was a rainy night. The streets were quiet and visibility was low. Antonio stood in the shadows of a narrow alleyway, watching. His eyes were fixed on a local shop owner locking up for the night, a man who had walked the same path home for years without fail. Reyes had been watching him for weeks, noting his routine, understanding his habits. As the man stepped onto the slick pavement, Reyes moved silently behind him, his footsteps masked by the rain. A single swift attack left the shop owner lifeless on the ground, his belongings untouched. There was no sign of robbery, just cold, calculated violence. Antonio stood over the body for a moment, breathing steadily, almost as if savoring the stillness before slipping back into the darkness, unseen and unheard. Investigators were baffled by the lack of evidence. No fingerprints, no DNA, nothing to suggest who the killer might be. Reyes' ability to move undetected made him a ghost in the city's labyrinth of streets and alleys. Some neighbors would later recall seeing a shadowy figure slipping through back streets, always with a hood pulled tightly over his face. By the end of November, 6 innocent lives had been claimed, and 4 others barely escaped death. The attacks were random, unpredictable, and always precise. Reyes struck without warning. His victims varied in age, gender, and background. From late-night joggers to taxi drivers, no one was safe. His weapon of choice was always different, adding to the confusion of the investigators. Antonio Reyes moved through the city like a phantom, leaving no trace except for one chilling clue, a distinct symbol carved into the pavement near each crime scene. This symbol, later identified as a twisted version of his initials, became his calling card, a mark of ownership over the chaos he unleashed. Calm and unremorseful, Reyes faced trial for 6 murders and 4 attempted murders. His demeanor in the courtroom was chilling, unblinking, and emotionless. Witnesses recounted terrifying encounters with him, while families of the victims sobbed in silence. The prosecution revealed his obsession with crime and control, painting a picture of a young man whose mind was consumed by darkness. Investigators presented his notebook as evidence, a chilling ledger of his crimes, written with precise detail. Each page contained sketches of the crime scenes, descriptions of his victims, and even reflections on their final moments. What shocked the courtroom most were the entries labeled "Unfinished Business," a list of names and addresses that hadn't yet been crossed out. The symbol he left at each scene, it was his twisted signature, a mark of ownership over his crimes, designed not just to taunt the police but to claim the city as his own. Reyes was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, his legacy etched in Chicago's darkest history. Antonio Reyes, a name that will haunt Chicago's history. A boy turned predator, slipping through the cracks of a city too distracted to notice. But the story didn't end with his capture. 6 months after Reyes was locked away, police began receiving anonymous letters, each one stamped with the same symbol that marked his crime scenes. The letters contained precise details of unsolved murders that had never been linked to Reyes. His cell was searched repeatedly, but nothing was found. The letters kept coming, each one taunting the police with secrets only the killer would know. Was it a copycat, an accomplice, or had Reyes planted the seeds of something much larger, something that wouldn't end with his imprisonment? Chicago's streets grew quieter after dark, fear replacing the usual noise of the city. People whispered about the ghost of Reyes, believing that his influence still lingered, reaching out from behind bars, or worse, that he had never truly been alone. Only the faint echo of footsteps remains, growing softer with each step, as if disappearing into the shadows. And there, in the stillness of an empty Chicago alley, his symbol is carved into the pavement, a whisper of unfinished business.